The most brutal power move is not destruction. It's not confrontation. It's not revenge. It's silence. It's withdrawal. It's leaving the other person with no ending, no explanation, no closure. Machiavelli understood that human beings are not addicted to pleasure or even to love. They are addicted to certainty. The mind craves finality. It craves a clean conclusion, a neat box to place events into. Without it, people unravel. They replay the story endlessly. They claw for meaning. They cannot move on. That is why withholding closure becomes one of the most devastating psychological weapons you can wield, because closure gives people peace. Without it, they live in turmoil, and that turmoil makes them permanently vulnerable to your presence. Most people believe they want happiness, but what they really want is answers. To know why something happened, to know where they stand, to know how the story ends. Think of someone abandoned without explanation. Their life may look fine, but their mind is still chained to that question. Why? This is leverage. If you give people closure, you free them. You untie the knot. They walk away lighter, calmer, at peace. But if you leave them without answers, they can't walk away. You live in their head. You own their attention. This is why Machiavelli would warn, never explain more than you must. The more you explain, the more you free them. The less you explain, a complete story dies. An incomplete one lives forever. Shakespeare's plays ended. Machiavelli's lessons never do. Why? Because Machiavelli spoke in principles, not finalities. His writings invite endless reinterpretation. They never truly conclude. That's why his influence still echoes centuries later. The same principle applies to people. Never give them the final page. A fight where you shout everything you feel, explain yourself fully, and slam the door. That person will sleep peacefully a week later. A quiet departure where they don't know what you think, don't know if you're angry, don't know if you'll come back. That person will never sleep peacefully again. The unfinished holds more power than the finished, because the mind cannot leave a puzzle unsolved. Machiavelli wrote that it is often wiser to appear less transparent than you are. When you leave people guessing, they begin doing the work for you. If you don't explain yourself, they start inventing explanations. If you don't reveal your intentions, they start imagining your next move. If you don't give them closure, they start rewriting the story 1,000 different ways. Each version they imagine keeps you alive in their mind. They can't escape you. And the beauty? While they waste energy spinning theories, you move freely, untouched by their turmoil. You've already moved on, but they remain trapped in the absence you left behind. Look at how often people demand closure in relationships, in arguments, in betrayal. They say, "Just give me honesty," or "I just need to understand." What they're really asking is, "Please free me." They think knowing the truth will heal them. They don't realize that closure is often nothing but a final illusion. A person begging for closure is really saying, "Take away my dependence on you. Release me from your hold." If you give it to them, you lose leverage. If you withhold it, you remain the one thing they can't stop circling back to. Machiavelli would say, if you want control, never give people the key to their own escape. We live in a culture obsessed with healthy communication. End things properly. Be clear, be transparent, offer closure. But ask yourself, who benefits from this? Closure benefits the other person, not you. It gives them peace. It gives them freedom. It allows them to walk away with their head high, feeling satisfied. Why should you give that gift? If someone has wronged you, betrayed you, or underestimated you, silence is colder, sharper, more unforgettable than words. You don't curse them. You don't scream. You don't explain. You just leave. And now they're left carrying the weight of an unfinished sentence forever. Every explanation you give is a rope you hand them. With enough explanation, they climb out of the pit of confusion and free themselves. Machiavelli would advise, never over-explain, speak less than you know, reveal less than you think. Leave gaps in every story, because the mind cannot stand gaps. It will fill them in with imagination, with paranoia, with endless replaying. And imagination is always harsher than reality. Silence makes their own mind your weapon. The lover. You end things with a long message explaining why. They cry, process, and heal. Months later, they've moved on. But if you end things without a word, leaving only questions, they never stop thinking of you. They wonder if you'll return. They wonder what they did wrong. You linger in every relationship that comes after. The enemy. You fight back, screaming all your reasons. They know exactly why you cut them off. Closure makes them feel justified in hating you, but if you walk away without a sound, they're stuck replaying the fight alone. They can't prepare against you because they don't know what you're planning. The colleague. You explain why you disagree. They nod, they accept. The conflict ends. But if you withhold, let the tension hang, and never clarify, they spend weeks second-guessing what you think of them. Their uncertainty is your dominance. Fear fades. Threats lose impact. Even pain dulls over time. But uncertainty, that never leaves. The absence of closure keeps the wound fresh because the mind doesn't know how to stitch it shut. It bleeds every time the thought returns, and people cannot stop returning to the thought. This is why Machiavelli would say, closure is mercy. Mercy weakens power. Withhold it. When you deny someone closure, you deny them peace. And without peace, they remain bound to you. So, what is the true lesson here? If you want power, don't give people peace. If you want control, don't give people the ending they crave. Silence, mystery, absence. These are your greatest weapons, not because they destroy people, but because they leave people destroying themselves in your name. And when their own mind becomes your prison guard, you've mastered one of the darkest and most effective laws of psychological leverage. A clean ending is a release. An unfinished story is a prison. Closure lets people rebuild, but suspense leaves them circling, searching, obsessing. That's the essence of Machiavelli's law of psychological leverage. You don't hurt people by striking them. You hurt them by never finishing the sentence, by leaving their mind running laps in your silence, always a step behind, trying to catch up to a version of you that no longer exists. Because once you leave someone without closure, they do the rest to themselves. They begin to invent reasons, blame themselves, blame you, rewrite the past, try to understand, reach out, seek revenge, and eventually spiral right back into dependence. And you, the one who walked away, don't have to lift a finger. You've already won. Here's the key. When you leave someone without closure, you create emotional imbalance. You walk away finished. They walk away open. And that open loop dominates their subconscious, even if they pretend it doesn't. They say they've moved on. They act like they don't care. They post, laugh, talk, but they're performing. Because the real story never ended. The dynamic becomes asymmetrical. You've processed it. They're still processing you. You're silent. They're thinking in monologues. You've closed the file. They're stuck on the same page. This imbalance is not cruelty. It's advantage. Machiavelli would see this not as manipulation, but as positioning. You maintain power not by controlling people's behavior directly, but by remaining the unsolved question in their minds. As long as they're still wondering about you, you still control the field. One of the most powerful applications of this law is what we now call ghosting. But ghosting isn't always emotional immaturity. It can be weaponized. Used consciously, it becomes a tool of disorientation and control. Here's how it works. You create a connection, deep, fast, intense. You mirror their emotions, reflect their needs, bond deeply. Then you vanish. No argument, no closure, just silence. Now they're stuck in a vacuum, emotionally revved up with nowhere to go. They begin to overanalyze, blame themselves, feel rejected, feel abandoned. And you? You're untouchable. You're everywhere and nowhere. You've become a phantom inside their psyche. The result? They dream about you, they hate you, they want to fix things, they stalk your behavior, they build narratives where they win you back. All of it is energy spent on you, and that energy is leverage. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. Obsession is obedience in disguise. To use this tactic at the highest level, you don't just withdraw randomly. You engineer the moment of departure. Here's how to do it with surgical precision. Step 1. Give them a peak emotional experience. Right before you vanish, give them a surge, deep praise, passionate connection, or a vulnerable moment. This spike creates contrast, and contrast creates memory. Step 2. Leave at the high point. Most people end relationships during conflict or decline. You disappear when things are intensely good. This confuses the mind. It violates the expected story arc. And now they're addicted to a high they never got to finish. Step 3. Say nothing. Not "I can't do this," not "it's not you," not "I need time." Say nothing. The less you give, the more their imagination takes over. Silence breeds projection. Step 4. Reappear subtly. Optional. If you ever choose to return, do so without explanation. A like, a short message, a vague emoji, just enough to stir the ashes and let them set the fire themselves. You're not the hero or the villain. You're the unresolved character. And unresolved characters live longer in the psyche than anyone else. Here's the psychological twist. People who don't get closure don't just suffer, they often return. Not to fix things, not for revenge, but because they want resolution and their mind tells them, you need to go back to end this the right way. But there is no ending. That's the design. So they reach out, and when they do, they're in a weakened state. They're no longer negotiating from a place of strength. They're negotiating from confusion. You now hold positional advantage, emotional detachment, and narrative control. They've been thinking about you. You haven't been thinking about them. That gap is the root of psychological dominance. Machiavelli's philosophy was not about cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was about control, about placing yourself in a position where others are always responding to you, not the other way around. Never giving closure aligns perfectly with this doctrine, because when you leave someone without resolution, you force them into your tempo. You force them to internalize you. You eliminate their sense of self-determination. You insert yourself into their emotional framework. And from there, even your silence becomes a command. You never ask for loyalty, but they give it. You never demand attention, but they focus on you. You never justify leaving, but they chase your reasons. This is not emotional recklessness. This is cold, strategic leverage, the kind of influence that cannot be bought, taught, or faked. It's earned through one brutal decision. Don't explain. Don't close the door. Just leave it open and let them wonder forever. The mind cannot accept what it cannot finish. That's why people don't need permission to hate you, but they need permission to forget you. And when you don't give them that permission, when you withhold closure, you become part of their identity. Not a memory, a scar, a reference point. And that reference point follows them everywhere. But Machiavelli's true genius was never in merely causing obsession. It was in knowing how to position that obsession in public, so that others not only remain loyal, they defend you, serve you, and chase you even in your absence. This is where psychological leverage becomes political. It's no longer about one person. It's about controlling the room by controlling how your silence is perceived by the group. And to do that, you must master the interplay between closure, status, and social scarcity. When someone doesn't get closure from you, they go searching for it elsewhere. And the first place they go? Other people. They talk, they speculate. They ask, "Have you heard from him? Do you know what she meant by this? Why do you think they left like that?" Every time they open their mouth, they spread your name, not because you're present, but because you're unresolved. This creates social gravity. Your absence becomes a phenomenon. People orbit it. They whisper. They guess. They invent narratives. And here's where it becomes Machiavellian. You didn't demand attention. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't even show up. But your silence now controls the discussion. They aren't gossiping. They're branding you. Now, you become an image, not a person. And images are harder to kill than people. Scarcity amplifies value. This is one of the oldest truths in economics and human behavior. What's rare is precious. What's inaccessible is desirable. What's gone without warning is unforgettable. So, when you remove yourself without closure, you create not just psychological scarcity, but social scarcity. People start saying, "He doesn't talk to anyone anymore. She vanished just like that." They never give explanations. And that scarcity becomes reputation. Even if people resent you, they respect your control. And even if they don't say it aloud, they wonder, what does this person know that I don't? Why are they so calm? Why do they never need to explain themselves like everyone else? That wonder is obedience in disguise. It means you've risen above the need for validation. And when others still crave closure, you become above them, not by status, but by emotional independence. That is the rarest trait in any social environment. And rare traits, like rare metals, always gain value. Here's the paradox Machiavelli would appreciate most. The more someone feels confused by you, the more they need to reaffirm loyalty to you publicly, just to make sense of their own identity. They may not know where they stand with you. They may feel neglected, rejected, or misunderstood. But to protect their ego, they defend you to others. Why? Because admitting they never got closure would mean admitting they weren't important enough. They lost control. They're still confused. They've been chasing someone who no longer chases them. So instead of admitting that, they explain away your behavior as mysterious, intelligent, or deeply principled. They do your PR for you. They preserve your reputation to preserve their dignity. That's leverage you can't buy. And you didn't even speak. There's a term Machiavelli would use to describe this: untouchable legitimacy. It's not given, it's felt, and it can only be built through contradiction. You must be present but distant, remembered but unreachable, respected but not available, admired but never completely understood. This balance creates a kind of emotional mirage. People chase you, speak of you, swear loyalty to you, but you're never fully in reach. And because you never give closure, they never stop trying to reach. The pursuit becomes their cage. You become the warden, and they love the prison, because the alternative, indifference, is too painful to bear. This is how emotional confusion becomes ritualized loyalty. They will check your messages years later. They will rewatch your words. They will study your silences. And eventually, they will teach others your legend, simply to validate their own unfinished story. Once you've created this effect, the loop of confusion, loyalty, and social speculation, your only job is to never disrupt it with excessive clarity. Never try to set the record straight. Never explain yourself later. Never return to give closure. If you return, return without answers. If you speak, speak without explanation. If they ask, smile and say, "Some things don't need to be said." Maintain your silhouette. Never step back into full view. Because the power was never in what happened. It was in what was left unsaid. Closure would burn it all down. Mystery keeps it breathing. This isn't a trick for the weak or insecure. In fact, the stronger and more confident someone is, the more this tactic pierces them. Why? Because strong people are used to control. They expect to understand everything. They thrive on certainty, dominance, and resolution. When you deny them that, when you vanish from their framework, refusing to let them categorize you, you challenge their self-image. You confront their ego. And now the strongest people start acting weak. They spiral. They reach out. They want answers. But you never give them what they want, because that's the law. Never give them closure. Let the mind become your cage. Let the ego do your work. Let the silence rule louder than your voice ever could. Power is not about domination through presence. It's about lingering through absence. When you never give people closure, you don't just control their emotional state, you infiltrate their reality. Every future decision they make is subconsciously shaped by the gap you left behind. That gap becomes sacred, untouchable, almost divine. This is the final transformation of Machiavelli's law of psychological leverage, from confusion to obsession, and finally to myth. Because when a person can't close the chapter on you, they do the next best thing. They turn you into a story, and stories live longer than explanations ever will. Every person they meet after you gets compared to the ghost of your silence. Not because you were perfect, but because you were never fully real. You left before they could define you. You disappeared before they could dissect you. You stopped talking before they could destroy your mystery. And now, nothing else measures up. The closure they crave becomes the prison they live in. And as they struggle to understand why they can't move on, they unknowingly raise your status higher and higher in their mind. They tell others, they were different. No one made me feel that way. I don't know why, but I still think about them. These are not compliments. These are symptoms of psychological submission. Because once someone starts defending your impact without your presence, they're no longer thinking freely. They're worshipping a feeling you engineered through silence. If you had told them the truth, if you had offered an honest explanation, if you had walked them step by step through your reasoning, they would have understood you. And once people understand you, they lose fascination. They become logical, detached. The spell breaks. But silence creates an emotional cliffhanger. It denies resolution. It builds a false sense of almost knowing. And almost knowing is more addictive than knowing ever could be. This is why closure is not just a mistake. It's self-destruction. You remove yourself from their life so cleanly, so neatly, that there's nothing left to attach to. You vanish too well. And they move on. You gave them the weapon to forget you. You made yourself digestible. And that is the worst form of weakness Machiavelli could imagine, to be remembered accurately instead of being remembered powerfully. When someone says they ghosted me, what they're really saying is, they didn't give me the dignity of closure, and I can't forgive them for it because I still want it. This is the secret. Even hatred keeps you relevant. Even resentment is attention. And the one thing you should never allow yourself to become is forgettable. Machiavelli would call this strategic cruelty. You don't scream. You don't punish. You don't say goodbye. You just disappear while they still care. And now they're trapped in an infinite loop of emotional checking, hoping for a text, a sign, an explanation, anything. But nothing comes. And so the silence becomes louder than speech ever could. They hear it every night. And worse, they start filling it with stories they invent to survive it. This law doesn't only apply to relationships. It's a tool of universal dominance, especially in the political, professional, and social arenas. The competitor who never hears your strategy becomes paranoid. The employee you fire without feedback spends months trying to fix what went wrong. The friend you cut off without a fight keeps watching your life from afar, wondering if you ever miss them. The audience you stop feeding will chase your next word even more desperately, because the absence hurts more than any message could satisfy. Never giving closure means you never allow others to feel done with you. And when they can't end the story, You remain in control of it forever. You don't need to become perfect. You don't need to be loved. You just need to remain unresolved. To leave behind gaps so emotionally charged, so specific to your presence, that no one else can ever fill them. No explanation can replace them. No closure can erase them. They will try. They will try again. And the longer they try, the more powerful you become in their mind.